Hey everyone, James Reeves with TFBTV. Today we are looking at the lovely Steyr AUG Bullpup. Many of you have seen this gun before. It's iconic, most notably in the hands of Carl in the American classic film Die Hard. We've got one. Kavar was nice enough to send me one for T&E that I ended up purchasing because I liked it so much. So I think you have an idea of where this review is gonna go. But we have a Steyr A3 M1 that we're going to talk about today on TFBTV.
The AUG is a technologically advanced rifle by today's standards, but it was introduced 40 years ago and has been relatively unchanged since. The AUG went into development in the late 1960s to replace the Austrian FAL, which was known as the STG-58 in that country. The FAL was a 308 or 7.62 NATO rifle, whatever you prefer, that was heavy and it had recoil difficult for smaller shooters to manage. So like many countries, including the United States, Austria decided it was time to move away from the 30 caliber battle rifle and to go with a 5.56mm initially developed for the M16 by the United States. The Austrian army worked closely with Steyr on the development of the AUG, and the Austrian Office of Military Technology supervised the project. The long development process led to the adoption of the AUG by the Austrian army in 1977. Since then, the AUG became popular as a capable and deadly bullpup, being adopted by the armed forces of not only Austria, but Australia, New Zealand, Oman, Malaysia, Saudi Arabia, Ireland, and many other countries. The AUG's receiver housing is steel-reinforced aluminum, which makes it durable and lightweight. Similarly, the rifle stock is made from fiberglass-reinforced polymer. This is definitely high-tech now, but was beyond cutting edge back when the AUG was introduced. The AUG was then relatively unchanged for 20 years until 1997 when the A2 version of the AUG was introduced. With that updated version, the fixed sighting system was replaced with a Picatinny-style rail and a detachable scope, allowing the operator to decide what optic to use with the AUG. In 2005, the A3 version was introduced, and it featured several configurations offering up to 4 Picatinny-style rails, 1 at the top of the receiver and 3 around the barrel. All right, but enough about history. Unfortunately for all of you, this is just TFBTV and not quality programming from forgotten weapons. So let's talk about my personal pros and cons with the Steyr AUG.
So two of the best features of the Steyr AUG, the fact that you have a 28-inch overall length, which is pretty incredible considering it has a 16-inch cold hammer forged heavy barrel inside of this gun. The barrel change mechanism is awesome. With the bolt held open, you can't do this if the bolt's closed. So lock the bolt open, press this little button in, and then it's not even a quarter twist, and the entire barrel comes right out just that easy. Then you can swap in your new barrel. Boom, that's it. It's the easiest thing in the world. It's brilliant. Charging handles here on the left-hand side. It's a non-reciprocating charging handle, which means that when you fire the charging handle, unlike the AK, it isn't flopping back and forward, gonna take your hand off. So when you fire, the charging handle doesn't move. In my opinion, that's a much better, much safer way to shoot. And notwithstanding the fact it's got this quick change barrel and it's a bullpup with a piston basically attached to the barrel, as you can see here, you still get pretty good accuracy. I was shooting about 2-inch groups with Winchester White Box with this gun yesterday. There's a QD sling attachment point here, which is kind of a weird spot to have it. I mean, you also have a little bit of Picatinny rail here on this side if you wanted to go that route. But I think that this would, if you put a sling here, it might get in the way of your optic, as you can see. Kind of a strange spot to put it, but whatever. There's a blank space there anyways, may as well put something there. I guess I would rather just have more Picatinny rail, but then that would also look kind of weird, so this works. As you just saw, magazine changes can be a little bit of a bitch. They load at the rear of the gun. This is where your buttstock would be if you were shooting an AR-15 or an AK-47. And your buttstock is here, but you're loading your magazine into your buttstock. That's because the chamber is all the way back here. A lot of people would say, wow, that's really weird. And yes, indeed it is. But that's how the Bullpup design works. And that's one of its main benefits, is you have all of this barrel length in a package that is as small as, say, a 10.5-inch SBR AR-15, or virtually the same size as an H&K MP5, which only has an 8-inch barrel. Magazine release for a Bullpup, really not that bad. What I like about it is you can do it all with one motion, one hand. Although it's not as fast as an AR-15, it's still a pretty easy procedure. What I do is grab the magazine, and then with your thumb, you can press the magazine release, discard that magazine, put a new one in. It isn't quite a beveled and flared magazine well, but you can see it's got a little bit of beveling here, and that makes it fairly easy to insert a new magazine, even if you had to do so without looking. All right, so how do Bullpups work then if the trigger's up here, yet the action is all the way in the rear of the gun? Well, they connect through something called a trigger bar. Believe it or not, there are some people that say the Steyr AUG has an awful trigger because of that trigger linkage bar, makes it very heavy and mushy, and those people are actually correct. It's actually a really shitty trigger, unfortunately, because I love this gun. But that's just, it comes with the territory. If you're shooting a Bullpup rifle, you've got to deal with the trigger linkage bar. That typically leads to bad triggers. Now, companies like Geisley have made triggers for, I want to say the Tavor, maybe the Tavor X95, that are supposed to be pretty good, notwithstanding the fact you're using the trigger linkage bar. Out of the box, one of the major downsides, in fact, one of the only downsides, in my opinion, of the Steyr AUG is that the trigger is kind of crappy. And even though, yes, it has a craptastic trigger, as you can see here, still doing pretty well. And again, that's with a mushy trigger, and I'm using a Weaver 1-3X optic that I think cost me $159, and this thing still shoots pretty well. It also has a bolt hold open similar to the HK in that you pull it back, twist it up, and then it locks in place. That allows you to put a magazine, and you guys see where the magazine goes in towards the rear of the gun. You put your magazine in, and then now we're charged, we're good to go. It does have a last round bolt hold open, but it doesn't have a bolt release. So what that means is typically you've got to rack the charging handle in order to charge the gun after you put a new magazine in. However, you get no rearward pressure. You saw, like right now, because the gun's empty, I'm putting rearward pressure on the charging handle. However, when it holds open on the last round, since it does have a functioning last round bolt hold open, all you have to do is, there's no pressure to the rear, so you're just really bringing the charging handle back, and then you give it a little bump at the end, and then boom, it'll charge the gun. Cross bolt safety, if it's protruding on the right-hand side, you're in safe. Left-hand side, you're on fire. So right now, this gun is hot, ready to go. Comes with a vertical foregrip built into the barrel. Very easy to use. You pull down and push forward if you want it forward. But if you want to use the vertical foregrip, all you do is just simply swing it down. One thing that is kind of annoying, this charging handle is really close, especially if you have an optic, it's really close to the rail. And if you're trying to move fast, you might bang your knuckles, and it doesn't feel good. Look, I'm not gonna pretend like I'm a tough guy. Nobody likes rubbing their knuckles against an anodized aluminum cheese grater. Also, this is a piston-operated gun, and typically we associate piston-operated guns as having more recoil than, say, the direct impingement AR-15. Now, the AR-15 doesn't really have any moving components forward of the chamber. So whenever you fire, it just has a gas tube, gas comes down the tube, that delays the action. It provides the energy for the bolt carrier to cycle completely. With piston operated guns, whether long or short stroke operated, you have a gas piston, and you can see the gas tube right here, but you have a gas piston that's moving. So that means more reciprocating mass. You have a larger, heavier bolt and bolt carrier group moving to the rear. That's not as big a deal with a short stroke piston system that you have in the Steyr AUG versus, say, a long stroke piston in the AK-47. With the long stroke piston, it's a more simple device. You basically have the piston attached to the bolt carrier. Here you have a piston and then a little tappet, and the piston pushes back on the tappet, which then shoves the bolt carrier group. And typically these systems can be a little bit lighter weight. I prefer the slightly more complicated short stroke recoil systems to the long stroke, like those you find in the AK-47 and even the direct impingement in the AR-15. While the AR-15 is a slightly softer shooting gun than the Steyr AUG, which is surprisingly light shooting, you have all the benefits of the piston operating system, and that is they run generally cleaner, They're typically more reliable, at least that's how it's been said. There's going to be a debate over whether or not direct impingement guns or piston-operated guns are more reliable, or if there's any difference, but it's generally accepted that piston-operated guns tend to be a little bit more reliable and deal with dirt a little bit better.
The AUG features a 3-setting gas regulator, 1 setting for normal function, 1 setting for firing rifle-mounted grenades, and ingeniously, 1 setting for firing in conditions where the rifle is extremely fouled or dirty and needs a little extra gas to cycle the action. In conclusion, I was a little bit skeptical of the Steyr at first. I probably would have never even requested one for review if I didn't need it to make that awesome Die Hard video that I did for Christmas 2018. But as we sit here today in the first quarter of 2019, I'm glad I did make that request, because the AUG may be one of my most favorite guns in my collection after only 4 short months of ownership and several range sessions. But what do you guys think? Are the negatives of this expensive 40-year-old battle rifle with a terrible trigger outweighed by its durability and its proven track record? Let me know in the comments, and if you like this video, guys, please subscribe. Of course, all of the ammo I shot in this video was courtesy of my boys at Ventura Munitions, literally the best ammunition store on the face of the earth. And I also have to thank Blue Alpha Gear for their continued support of TFBTV. If you want to win a free Blue Alpha Gear belt, check us out on Patreon. Otherwise, I'll catch you next week.